Welcome back to the fundamentals. As you know, as you've been plugging into these videos, we've been diving into the specific fundamentals that make a phenomenal real estate agent. Again, it's not necessarily about just getting overly creative, but it's about really committing to the fundamentals of being a great real estate agent and running a great real estate business. And then interlacing it with some of your creativity and uniqueness on top of that. So today, as promised, we are going to be diving into listing presentations, or like I like to call them, listing consultations. And over the next several weeks, we're going to be talking about a specific listing activity, closing activity to get more business. We are in the most competitive real estate market we've ever seen. And for us to compete in the most competitive market, our skill set has to increase. And we have to make sure that we're focused on the most dollar productive activities, specifically around taking more listings. I'm getting a little bit of a glare here. I'm going to push that. And so today we're going to talk about how easy it is to plug into the listing presentation provided to us in eEdge and the marketing there. So let me start by sharing my screen, and we're going to start breaking down the listing presentation today. Today is more a conversation around the components of a listing presentation, what should be included in a listing presentation, and then over the next couple weeks, we're going to dive into closing techniques of how to really drive to get the commitment in the appointment. And then we're also going to model a listing presentation for you. So as you can see here, we're just going to kind of walk through a couple of these slides here. The key here in all of these appointments is to be the expert. It's not enough anymore just to be likable. You've heard me say this several times, where business used to be done where I like you, you like me, let's do business together. And there still is a component of that connectivity. However, on top of that connectivity, you have to really show your expertise. And a lot of times that expertise is portrayed through evidence, which we're going to talk about today. So let's talk a little bit about motivation. It's really critical for us to get to the motivation of our buyers and sellers in the appointment. And we have to remember that a lot of time, the first thing they're going to portray as their motivation is a prepared response to the question that they know you're going to be asking. So a lot of times the initial motivation that they're willing to give is not necessarily their underlying motivations. We have to get really good at asking questions, peeling back those layers, and getting down to what their real motivation is. So real quickly, generally speaking, you know, the underlying motivation for most buyers is price. They want to get a great deal. Features, they want to make sure they're getting the right house. They want to have a comfort level with the process. And for the buyers, it's more important that they have that connection, that emotion, because you're going to be spending a lot of time together, and they want you to celebrate the house that they're moving into. For sellers, generally it comes down to pricing. They want to get the most money possible, timing, how quickly can you do it, and they love to see massive action. So I'm going to give some suggestions around massive action today that I think is some things you can do immediately in that listing appointment to show that you're willing to get to work and take massive action on their behalf. Now, these are not always the only motivations. We have to get deeper into what is the emotional connection to the move. And again, that's asking a lot of great questions. I'll go deeper on that as we model the listing presentation over the next couple weeks. It's really critical for us to be prepared as we go into a buyer consultation or a listing presentation. We are the kings of trying to wing it and not preparing for a meeting, just being like, yeah, we've done this for a long time. I got it from here. It's really important to go in prepared, and it's going to be obvious if you did anything to prepare for that listing presentation before you go into it. Now, particularly for newer agents, I say slow down, really overly prepare for these meetings. As you become a more experienced agent, you'll find that you can get prepared for these meetings pretty quickly because you can anticipate the questions you're going to get asked. But here's a couple bullet points of things that I think are really critical in preparing for that meeting. Number one is we need to be able to have the skill set to identify how they're wired very quickly. Now, a lot of us have gone either through the career visioning training or have an understanding of the DISC profiling to understand how someone is wired. While I love the career visioning process for a deeper analysis, the DISC profile is such a simple way to identify how somebody is wired. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to have someone go take the DISC profile assessment prior to you meeting them. But if you have a pretty simple understanding of what the DISC is, D-I-S-C, is, you can quickly identify who they are. So for example, someone that's prominently a D, they are a driver. They want to get to the point. They want to press the movie. They don't want to talk about the weather and those type of things. They want to get right to the point, and they want to see how you're going to drive the initiative forward. Predominant I is someone that's all about the relationship. It is really important for you to slow down, take the connectivity, celebrate the things that they love in their life, become friends, and make that connection. Higher S's tend to be very loyal, so they're going to be a little bit slower in making the decision. There's going to be a lot of emotion in making the decision. So you want to use a lot of not really strong, pushy closing techniques, but almost some more assumptive of closes and tie it to their emotions. And then a predominant C is going to need all of the details. Now, it's really important for you to have some kind of idea of how they're wired prior to walking into a meeting. Obviously, you have your preset objective of anytime you walk into a meeting, your preset objective is to walk out of that meeting with signed paperwork. But how you go about getting that paperwork signed is going to be determined on how they are wired. So for example, if you go to a predominant or a dominant D, a driver, and you want to sit there and talk about statistics and really just outline every little detail of the transaction, they're going to blow their lid and steam's going to come out of their ears, and they're going to be frustrated with you before you even ask them for the opportunity to do the business. On the other side of that, if you're sitting down with an engineer or a dominant C who's expecting all of the details and walk through the process, and you try to rush the process, same thing, you've already lost that listing prior to even making the invite to use your services. So identify how they're wired. A lot of times I'll do this, really focus on this on the phone call and setting the appointment, whether it was a referral from somebody else or whether it was through a web lead or a cold call. And just by asking simple questions, you can tell pretty quickly how they're wired. If they're rushing the conversation, they're a D. If you're able to make a quick connection and talk about the neighborhood and their pets and their family or whatever it is, they're probably an I. If they're constantly asking statistical questions or leaning into the statistical analytics that you're giving them, they're probably a C. But that way, knowing how they're wired really will help you prepare better for that meeting. The second bullet point here is market research. So it is really important for you to go in with the statistical data of what the market is doing and what specifically is going on in their neighborhood. Right now, it's really interesting where so many people are enamored with the real estate market that it seems like everybody believes they are the expert. And a lot of times I find myself where it used to be people would find out I'm in real estate, they'd ask the question, oh, how's the market? Now they find out I'm real estate and they want to say, oh, let me tell you how the market is, because they watch so much HGTV or listen to the news or whatever it is that are talking about the real estate market. So it's really important for us to go in with the statistical data, the market research of what's going on so that we can re-educate them. It used to be a process of educating them, and now we have to deconstruct their preconceived notions and reconstruct or re-educate what's really going on and what the reality of the market and their situation is in a way that they're going to embrace and be excited about. Tax data. So it's really important to pull the tax data because a lot of times, really for a couple of reasons. Number one, the tax data in the previous history is a lot of times what people tell you they owe on the house or what they bought the house isn't necessarily the truth right up front. Second thing is to find out who are the real decision makers on a property. Nothing's more frustrating than walking into a listing presentation and crushing the listing presentation, and at the very end of it, when it's time to sign the documents, for them to say, oh, and by the way, I'm not even the owner of the house, or my husband also needs to sign on the paperwork because he's an owner. So make sure that you do your homework on who is the real decision maker and make sure that both those people are present at the property. CMA, comparative market analysis. I see agents go crazy with these where they walk in with 20 to 30 comps. I like to keep this very minimal. If they're a higher C, they may want to see more data, but I'll kind of keep those in my back pocket and only pull them out as needed. I generally only like to walk in with 4 or 5 comps, show them specifically what's on the market, but more importantly, what's pending or what's sold, because that's what's really going to drive the price. And I'm going to show you the technique of how I use these comps strategically to help them drive the price of where the price should be, other than me telling them where the price should be. So again, don't go overly crazy with too many comps, but make sure that you do have that statistical data. Go in with an initial idea of what you feel like the price should be for you to sell the house. And while we're going to let them drive the price, you're leading them to the price that you pre-set or pre-decided that home is worth on the market. Don't forget, you are the expert. Too many people walk in and say, with the idea of your house is worth 285, and the seller's like, well, I think it's worth 315, and the agent's like, oh great, it's worth 315, let's do this, with no statistical evidence behind it, and you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're taking a listing that's unmarketable at that price, and you're going to create some uncomfortable conversations for yourself with that seller down the road. Listing presentation packet, I'm going to walk you through that here in a second. And then I really like to get to the presentation early so I can drive the neighborhood, because one thing that happens all of the time in the listing presentation is they've already driven their neighborhood. They already know every house that's for sale by owner or on the market. So drive the neighborhood. If there's a for sale by owner in the neighborhood, I'll sit there and call it before I walk into the meeting to tell them, oh yeah, I noticed down the street that there's a for sale by owner. I called that house. It's currently listed at this. They're getting this much activity, whatever it is. That's going to show your seller that you take a lot of initiative on their specific property. So I know that a lot of us are scurrying from appointment to appointment, but particularly for a listing appointment, I like to get there early enough that I can drive the neighborhood, be familiar with it, and be ready to talk specifically about their neighborhood and the competition there. Last thing there is, again, don't forget your preset objective is always to go in, get signed paperwork. Unless you learn something about these people that you decide they're not in alignment with who you are and your values, and you decide you don't want to work with them, you can change your objective at that point. But don't forget, your preset objective is, I am going into this meeting to get listing presentation or listing paperwork signed. I'm taking this listing today. So let's jump into the listing presentation. A lot of people struggle with, what actually do I take to the listing presentation? I don't love the wording listing presentation, because if you're going in and just presenting data and sitting there saying, hey, this is who I am, this is what we do, you're already going to have a disconnect with them. I like to call these listing consultations. Other than listing presentations, you may be thinking tomato at this point, but it's not about you presenting the information. It's really, you have to make this meeting about the client and not about you. I think a lot of agents go into these meetings feeling like, hey, I got to go in there and do nothing but sell myself. And you're going to have the opportunity to sell yourself, but you're only selling the portions of yourself that really fix a problem for them. And this is one of the biggest things I think is critical in both a listing presentation and or a buyer consultation, is the better you can get at what's called the needs analysis, you can actually shorten the length of these meetings and make them much more impactful, because a listing presentation would suggest that I'm going to present everything about all of my services and everything that I do, and somewhere in those 100+ things, 2 or 3 of them are really going to resonate with them. But if we reverse that and ask great questions and make it about the client and really uncover what their motivations are and what their real needs are, they have a problem, and their whole purpose of this meeting is they specifically want to see how you can solve that problem better than anybody else. Now, if 70% of the things that I do that I think are phenomenal are in no relation to solving their problem, every time I'm talking about something that isn't in relation to that problem, they're going to disconnect from the conversation. So I like the listing consultation and having the marketing piece there, but a lot of times I'm not going through it page by page, but I'm leaving it for them for some additional statistical data or some additional information for them to look at after I'm gone. But again, a lot of this is how I present this listing packet or listing consultation is going to be really driven by how they are specifically wired and what they're looking for. So the couple things about, before I show you where to access the listing presentation and how to edit it in eEdge, let me show you a couple things that I think are really important in the process of a listing presentation. So at this point, you've already made some kind of connection with this person because you set an appointment with them. They were either referred to you or you found them in your lead generation efforts, but you've had some kind of connection with them to the point where they've agreed to meet with you. So here's some bullet points of the way I like to see a listing presentation go. And again, I'm going to model this for you in a future fundamental. One of the first things I like to do is to ask for them to give you a tour of the house. Hold on, I'm fighting a sneeze here. I think it went away. So I like to, a lot of times they want to immediately go and sit down. A lot of times I'll just immediately go into invite for them to show me the house. I'll say, hey, you know what? I've come prepared to talk about the house. I've done a lot of research on the market, but I've only been able to learn so much about your house from outside the door. Now that I'm inside, would you mind giving me a quick tour of the house so I can better familiarize myself with the house? Now, there's two real objectives to doing this. Is number one is I want to see if there's anything about the house that's going to directly affect the pricing of the house that I've already predetermined of the actual value of the house. If I walk into a room and the carpet's torn up, or you can smell that there's obviously been water damage or whatever it is, that those type of things are going to affect the house. I also want to know what the conversation is going to look like about decluttering the house and getting it ready to market. But that's number one objective of having the tour of the house. Number two objective of touring the house is I'm looking for arrows to add to my quiver so that when I'm having a conversation, I have some connectivity points. What I mean by this is you're walking around and there's a picture of them with their kids at Disneyland. You can say things like, again, you don't want to feel nosy, but you can say things like, oh my gosh, this picture's great of your family. How many years ago was this at Disneyland? Oh, my kids love Disneyland as well. All I did there is real quickly some kind of connectivity of you have kids, I have kids, we both like Disneyland, whatever it is, there's a point of connection. So I'm looking for little things so as I go throughout the house of number one, getting a deeper confirmation of how they're wired. Number two, creating some opportunities for connectivity with the client. The more connected they feel to me, interlaced or coupled with the value that I'm going to show them, increases the opportunity for an easier close when it's time. So view the house. I'm reestablishing the rapport that I connected with them on the phone call. I'm going to start with my needs analysis to get some clarity on their motivation. So a lot of times I'll have my information in front of me, but I'm not even going to open it. But I'm going to start by asking them some questions. And one of the best questions that we use all the time is, and this kind of throws them off guard, is, man, thank you so much for giving me a tour of your house. This is a beautiful house and I love the neighborhood. Help me understand better why you're looking to sell right now. So you just complimented them on how their house looks, the neighborhood, such a great place. Why would you want to change your circumstances? Because this is such a great house and a great neighborhood. So that opens up a conversation instead of you saying, hey, I'm here only to sell your house, but it's like, help me understand. And then with a needs analysis, go 3 deep on everything, just asking more and more questions. What more can you tell me about that? Help me understand that. What do your neighbors think about you moving? So I start using the needs analysis to start really pulling out what are their primary objectives. And then I can go into my consultation or presentation mode. And then I'll show you how the listing presentation provided by eEdge or KW kind of walks you through the pricing strategy, the paperwork, getting clear on some expectations. So let's flip over to that conversation real quick. So if you go to eEdge and click on the marketing button, you go right into where we've looked at before, the marketing center. Right here you can see that you can either type in to search for the listing presentation, or it is actually right here down here as a featured product. There's a pre-listing presentation if you send a pre-listing packet to the homes, or you can click right on the listing presentation for a solo agent or a listing presentation for a team. And I'm not going to walk you through every page of this one. I'm actually going to show you the one we've created for my team using the same template. But as you go into this and you click personalize it, everything inside of this listing presentation is fully customizable. So it's going to pull in all your contact information. It's going to pull in your logos, all of that for you. It takes a minute to load because it is a bigger document. But the key here is to two things. One, slow down enough that you read through it and say, what do I want in here? But don't go so slow that in 6 months from now, you're still using the excuse of, well, I'm not doing my lead generation because my listing presentation isn't quite done yet. So get after this once, commit a couple hours to it. It should take you no longer than really an hour to an hour and a half to say, I'm going to walk through this with a fine-tooth comb. I'm just going to modify it a little bit to make sure it meets exactly what I'm looking to accomplish. And then it's set and it's done. I will show you the one piece that I do modify on this monthly are my statistics, but it's not inside this document. It's a supplementary document that I'm going to show you, and that is the only thing we're changing on it. Everything else stays exactly the same. Once a year, we go through it and make changes. So you can see here, as you go through this, I like the way it's outlined because particularly for a newer agent that doesn't have several hundred listing presentations under their belt, this walks you through how to do the listing presentation. So page one is the cover page. Page two, it dives you into helping you with the needs analysis. So it even gives you some questions to ask right there where you can just go through as if this is part of the presentation, is going through and say, hey, help me understand on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst and 10 being the best, what's the one thing that has to happen in this transaction for your experience to be a 10? Okay. And then I like the follow-up question. Okay, awesome. Take notes, right on there. Okay, what would have to happen for it to be a 10 plus experience, like over the moon, over the top, killer experience where you become my #1 fan? Awesome, right on it. So then you can ask the questions. I really like that page of it. I think it helps dive right into the needs analysis. The other thing that you can, if you feel like you need to go deeper with them on this, how does someone win or lose with you? Help me understand in life, how does someone win with you? If I want this to be a long-term relationship, what are some consistent things that have to happen throughout this transaction for me to continually win on a daily basis with you? They're probably going to say things like, hey, overly communicate, blah, 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 whatever those are, jot those down. Again, generally speaking, if it's a high D, I'm going to use this page, delivering a 10 experience, and I'm going to jump this page. If it's a C or an I or an S, I'm going to go through this part as well and get a little bit deeper on that. A guide to selling your home. A lot of these things, the things that are important to them are their experience, technology, expertise, communication. So a lot of these, it's already outlined what are the primary things. And based on what they've told me through the needs analysis, I might jump from one to the other, right? So if I'm sitting there with an older client that doesn't really understand technology, I may breeze through that very quickly and move on. If they've said, it's really important for me to get huge exposure on the house and know what that looks like, I'm going to jump deeper into the technology piece. So having it all there is important, but knowing how to navigate around the presentation based on the individual is really important. It goes a little bit deeper on this page. And then why Keller Williams, it talks about KW. And then your 14-step marketing plan, it walks you through all of this. Again, you'll notice on the one I'm going to show you here in a second is I've eliminated a couple of these and added in some additional ones towards our 13-point marketing plan, okay? A lot of things about our marketing, open houses, pricing. Again, I'm going to model this in a future fundamentals video of actually how to have the conversation on all these. But the primary purpose of this fundamental today is for you to come in and say, hey, I've got this resource to me. What are the minor, notice I'm saying minor modifications I need to make for it to match who we are, so that you have this up your sleeve and ready to go when it's time for a listing presentation. This is also an important one, is client testimonials. Because people like to see that as supportive evidence. So let me show you real quickly here. What the finished product looks like. Now, again, it's super simple. All it is pulled in my logo. Same thing here, same sheets we've already showed you. You can notice on this page, I added in all about Green Group. What's our unique value proposition? What does that look like? I also like to outline, because it's important for me that our clients know that we give back in the community where we serve. So I talk real briefly about Green Group Gives, helping them understand that a portion of all the commissions we earn go back to serving the community where we live. I go through and outline our value proposition. I do think it's important to talk about KW because it is part of our value proposition. You can notice I've modified to our 13-step marketing plan. And a lot of this you can see are very minor changes. Most of these pages have no changes to what's already prepared and available to me as the listing presentation. But you can see every page is now branded to who we are. And then we get down and I'll show you and I'll model this for you as the pricing strategy and how to use this page and a net sheet for the clients. And really what the conversation looks around this, but almost every one of these pages has 0 modifications to it. Obviously, we came down here and put in some of our client testimonials, and it's important to have those, as we've talked about before, on your website. So that being said, super simple. It should take you no longer than an hour, really an hour and a half for you high C's that want to make sure all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed. But it's so simple to use this tool, and it's a powerful tool, looks sharp, easy to use. Now you can either use this digitally on your iPad or a computer, or you can print it out for your clients, whatever you feel like is best. And sometimes that's more dependent on how the client is wired than what you want to do. Now, the couple supplemental pieces that I put, because one of the most critical things, parts of a listing presentation is you go make the connection. You have the connectivity. You do a phenomenal needs analysis. You get some clarity on what they're really trying to accomplish. You show them, or you're telling them how you're specifically going to solve that problem better than anybody else, what tools and strategies you've implemented that are going to solve that problem for them better than anybody else. And then the critical piece that so many people forget or don't use is to give the evidence of how you can do those things you're saying you can do. People expect the evidence. They want to see that it is true. So these are the couple things that we change out monthly to make sure that we have the supporting data. So the actual listing presentation or the guide to selling your home does not change. However, the statistical evidence does change. So we create your local expert, where we can go through and change out our statistics, and you guys see how we do this. If you've been coming to team meeting, you see how we use these tools and give you the statistics for these. So this is one piece of supplemental evidence that we provide. And a lot of times I'm barely touching into my guide or my listing presentation packet, but I always am showing these statistics. And it's really easy for them to see. The other one that is really easy for them to see is a graph just like this. More listings taken, more listings sold, and it shows our percentage against the market. Now again, this one is the template that is available to you in your MyKW or your KW Connect. And we give you the stats every single month. Now the key here is we give you the office stats of how we're outperforming the market, but it's also important for you to be tracking your own statistics, so that if you're even outproducing the office, then you use your own statistics, and it even gives you one more layer of evidence to not only say, hey, not only am I part of the #1 real estate office in this county who's outperforming the market by this, I'm actually outperforming the market by 3% more at this percent. So whatever that looks like, you need to be able to tell your story and give the evidence, and instantly they're going to look at this and say, man, this is my guy. He's outperforming the market. His numbers are showing up. He's showing me that he can do the things that he just told me he can do to solve my problem. And it makes the close so easy if you're using these. Now, the couple statistics that I think are really critical right now to be talking about in your listing presentations is helping them understand what percentage of your listings sell compared to the market. Number 2 is, what is your sales price versus list price compared to the market? Number 3 is days on the market compared to the market. Number 3 is how are you performing compared to the market and listings taken, and how are you performing in the market compared, or how are you performing in listings sold compared to the market? All of those things, if you can show that you're outperforming the market and all of those things and give them the statistical evidence behind it, at this point, they're going to be begging you to do the business with them because you've built that rapport, you've got clarity on what their problem or what the problem is and how you're going to solve it. You've given them a detailed strategy of what you're going to bring to the table, and then you've given them the evidence behind it. Now, remember, if you go back to the bullet points that I was talking about in the listing presentation, one thing I really love is the immediate action. So one of the things that we do for a lot of our listings is we actually take with us specific flyers or handouts or whatever it is, so I can have that stack on the table with me, so that I can say, actually, we've come prepared today, that as we sign the paperwork and move forward, the timing of getting everyone aware of your house being on the market is critical. So we've actually time blocked the next hour after this consultation that we're going to go knock your neighborhood this afternoon and let them know we have a house coming on the market and who they might know that wants to move to this neighborhood. And then I have that there, so I'm like, I've already time blocked my time. I'm going straight door knocking and to work for you right now. So a lot of times things like that will get them to be like, okay, let's do this. If they're not ready to have you knock the neighborhood or the house needs some work, figure out another immediate action. I love the idea of them feeling like, I'm going to do something for you today. I'm going to do something to move this whole initiative forward today. I'm doing something to solve your problem today. If they see that initiative, to me, that's just one more value piece that they're saying, at this point, I have no choice but to work with this person because he showed me what he can do. He's got clarity on my problem. He's ready to take an immediate action. Basically, I don't want to get in his way. Let's make this happen. Okay. So those are the a couple things I wanted to cover today. We're out of time. Included with this link today that I'm going to send out on the video is I'm going to send out this this link to a listing presentation example that's posted on KW Connect by one of the top listing agents in Austin that I really like. This is an example of a listing presentation, and I think that it would be a great thing for you to go watch. So again, we ran a little bit over time. The challenge, my challenge for you today is get into eEdge, download the listing presentation and the buyer consultation, time block, set yourself a little timer, say, I am taking no longer than 1 hour to modify this and getting some clarity on it, and set it, get it done, and be done with the actual packet. And then it becomes about increasing your skill set of the presentation and knowing how to present it and go for the close, which we'll be talking about next week. Thanks for being on. Thanks for watching the fundamentals. Hope you continue to find value in them. Go out, make it a great day. Proud to be in business with you.